All right, we're live, Zach G.
Oh boy.
This is it, baby. The pilot, the Bearded Bastards Wrestling Podcast, brother. All right. So, guys, just a heads up. This is our pilot episode just to introduce ourselves, the why, the what, the how, the when, the where, the who of what is going to happen with this channel, the Bearded Bastards Podcast. Now, we're using podcast as a loose term. It's more going to be a recap show. Live streams. We'll do roundtables. We'll invite the bros and broettes that want to chat about wrestling and that have watched the shows, the pay-per-views. We got a lot of things in store. But let's tell you how this all came about, okay? I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, and they told me that there's something that they were almost like they could see through a crystal ball. And they said there's something that you have been thinking about for a very long time, something that you're passionate about, that you love to do, aside from being Robert Frank, the car rage guy, the better be fucking swole guy. There's something you are passionate about that you need to put into motion ASAP. And I'm thinking about what it is. And I really don't have many hobbies, especially ones that I could talk about. This is a public show now. But I was thinking about it. What else am I really passionate about besides making videos, being Robert Frank, the character, all that? It's professional wrestling. That is my one true love. And albeit there have been ups and downs with that relationship, wrestling and I am back full swing into watching pretty much all of the shows. And it is something I'm passionate about. I love talking about it. I love talking about it with Zach G, who we'll introduce in a minute. Me and him, basically every Dynamite, a lot of the Raws, a lot of the SmackDowns, a lot of the pay-per-views, AEW and WWE pay-per-views, we sit there and we'll text message back and forth throughout the whole show. What we think about this match, who's hot, who's not, this chick, Mariah May, hottest chick on the planet. Zach knows every time Mariah May is coming on TV that he's going to get
a text. Message. Yeah, I wait for a text. I'm like, I know.
So it's this is going to be, we're going to try to do the best we can to watch as many shows as we can. Obviously, with the amount of wrestling that's out there right now, there's got to be 12 hours a week between Dynamite, Raw, SmackDown, Rampage, Collision, NXT, pay-per-views, blah, blah, blah. There's no way that we both have time to watch all of them, but we are going to do our best to coordinate and at least get 2 shows a week that we could review, we could talk about, and it will be fun. I will let you guys know that this is going to be strictly wrestling related. This is not going to be Robert Frank stuff. This is not going to be any character shtick or anything like that. It is going to be just wrestling talk and doing reviews. So you guys know me. I'm Robert Frank from social media. Robert Frank 615 everywhere. Car Rage videos, Better Be Swole videos, Meathead Minutes, Glorious House of Gains podcast. And my co-host on the Glorious House of Gains podcast is the legendary Zach G. Tell them about yourself, Zach.
Hello, everybody. Zach G here. I've been featured in a couple of your videos, getting weights dropped on my foot and all that stuff. So we became, and I started following Rob with like 2017, and things happened. We became good friends, and I'm on, his Glorious House of Gains podcast, and we have been, talking about wrestling. I think, Rob, it was when the start of AEW is, I think, when we started more engaging with the wrestling talk.
We were excited for AEW to start because at the time WWE was just pretty much unwatchable, and the indie scene was popping off, and PWG and Ring of Honor was still had some great underground talent, and it was like, wow, why isn't this stuff on TV? And then before you know it, Cody, the Bucks, Kenny Omega, they got with Tony Khan, they created AEW, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and and you watch a lot of that more, the PWG, the Japanese stuff, and you kind of pointed me in that direction, send me videos to watch and things like that. Entertainment. I think one of the first versions you sent me was the actually real exploding ring match from Japan, opposed to the one that AEW had with the 2 firecrackers.
Yeah,
you remember that one? So
yeah, I'm pretty sure Hayabusa and somebody was in that match, and not the Eddie Kingston, John Moxley, or Kenny Omega match that they had in AEW, which was a Yeah, like you said, 2 firecrackers.
Absolutely. And so we started discussing wrestling, and we started having a lot in common. You know, he didn't, you know, I'll go back way, I'm a little bit older than Rob, about 6 years older. So we go way back to the early 80s when I started. But yeah, I've always been a big wrestling fan. You know, it's funny, Rob. What pisses me off. I remember when I was a kid, I was a wrestling fan. Even when I was older, you know it's fake.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. How dumb do you think I am? No shit.
It's a male soap opera is basically what it is.
With good athletes, you know, in great shape, and that's what, you know, the attraction is to me.
Well,
Like,
well, I
whoa,
don't
whoa,
go
whoa,
so
whoa,
far
whoa,
about
whoa,
great
whoa, whoa.
shape. Yeah.
You know, well, most of them back in the day were. We'll get into the.
And if they weren't in shape, they were big freaking guys. They were, you know, Big John Studd, Andre the Giant. No, did they look like the Ultimate Warrior, Rick Rude? No, but they were big human beings. King Kong Bundy, Kamala. They were
Right.
guys that if you were in the ring or you saw them down a dark alley, you'd walk the other way because they were just huge guys. Now you got, albeit I like them, you got guys like Darby Allin, who's 5'7", 160 pounds. You got
Oh
Hook
boy.
in there throwing people around. It's like, come on, bro. But listen,
We'll get into that,
we'll
Rob,
get into
because you know
all
my
that in
pet
a minute.
peeves are. Yeah, but back then, like if you were 6'10" or whatever, 350 pounds, there wasn't a lot of you. Or if you were
Right.
smaller, there wasn't a lot of you.
Right.
Now it's kind of been, you know, but you know where I'm going. So I don't know if I actually introduced myself that much, but just
No, you did. You're Zach MFG, man. You're in you're in the videos, you're on the podcast, and you're a lifelong pretty much wrestling fan. I think you were telling me earlier 81 is when you started
I
watching.
think it's 82, and we'll get into that, my first memory of professional wrestling. But obviously the reason for the name of the podcast is pretty obvious.
Right, because we both have beards. And again, anytime that Zach and I are out in public anywhere, whether we're in Atlantic City, we're at some kind of an expo, we're at a book signing, wherever we may be together, out at a bar, people always look at us and they, as Vince McMahon would call it, the airport test. That everybody turns their heads and they look. They don't know what we are. They just see a black beard and a big white beard, and this guy looks like Santa Claus. This guy looks like a terrorist. And you know what's going on here? Who are these guys? They would people stop us. Are you guys wrestlers? Are you guys UFC fighters? Are you what are you guys? Why are you together?
We're not small guys either. Which kind of, and I wear extra small shirts, obviously, but yeah, it's funny. We walk around and Bros pretty much told me I can never shave my beard.
Not allowed. Not allowed. While I have a beard, you have to have a beard.
It's not going anywhere. This beard taught me out a lot.
We've went through the what. Okay, this is going to be a wrestling podcast. Don't come to this channel looking for rage videos or Better Be Swole videos. This is going to be strictly wrestling talk. We introduced ourselves with the who, now the why. There's a billion wrestling podcasts with a billion talking heads, some former pro wrestlers with a co-host, some people, you know, that never have been in the industry or don't, you know, they just love wrestling like we do, and they have their own podcasts. I particularly listen to K100. I love Disco and Conan and Joe Feeney. I love their show. I do listen to Meltzer from time to time. I try to stay away from Cornette just because of his political affiliation. He reminds me every video that he hates Donnie T. And it's like, all right, dude, I don't care who you hate and who you don't
why
hate.
bring it up? Because that's a shame, because I still do listen, even though I don't agree with him on that. Because he is really knowledgeable. He knows his stuff.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And he blocked me on Twitter. So, and Zach and I are both blocked by Sami Zayn on Twitter.
He blocked both Sami Zayn, and I'm a nobody on Twitter. Like I'm not like I'm somebody on the other platforms. He blocked me. He responded to my comment and blocked me. And Rob got blocked the next day because he piled on.
So the why. Million wrestling podcasts, million talking heads, millions of people that are out there talking about wrestling. Why do you want to listen to the Bearded Bastards podcast? Well, I'll tell you why. Because we are going to make this a show for the people. We want the audience, the people that love listening to us and give a damn about our opinions. We want to bring you on to the show. We want to do roundtables with you guys. I could fit up to 10 people on this StreamYard thing. And when we do pay-per-view live streams after a pay-per-view is over, we'll have a bunch of people on there. We'll let you guys kind of direct and steer and navigate the show. It's going to be a show for the people. We thankfully, because of who I am and the contacts and the connections that I made over the years, a lot of wrestlers follow me. The Undertaker follows me. John Morrison follows me. The Usos follow me. Rikishi follows me. Not saying that I could get them on the show, but I'm saying, down the line somewhere, possibly we could get some interviews. Crowbar, I'm very good friends with Crowbar, formerly of WCW. Crowbar's wrestled for every organization. He's got contacts that he could put me in touch with if we ever need to get somebody. The one thing, since podcasting and live streams and YouTube has blown up, everybody wants to be paid for these interviews. And if we're really not making money, it's kind of hard to come out of pocket to pay somebody, whatever it's going to be, a $500 fee to get them on the podcast for 45 minutes. And we're not making anything out of it. So eventually, hopefully we're able to monetize our channel. Hopefully when we do the live stream, super chats come in and all that money that we generate can fund for future guests and stuff like that, and just make it fun. But I want to take this seriously. Zach and I, before we decided to go live with this, we said, listen, we're going to take this serious and we're going to do it. This is not going to be a one and done. We're not going to do it for 2 weeks and then give up on it. We want to continue to do this and put out some good stuff. Cause again, we both watch all the shows anyway, and all it's costing us right now is our time to sit here and do the shows with you. So that is the why. And last but not least, I want to go over just my wrestling background, Zach's wrestling background, our Mount Rushmores of wrestlers and wrestling, our first memories of it. So I'm going to start. My first memory of professional wrestling, I remember it vividly. It was ICW, Randy Savage, the Paphos territory. I think they were in Lexington, Kentucky.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Randy Savage pile drove Ricky Morton from the Rock and Roll Express through a table. And that was my first memory of wrestling. And it was on some random channel where you had the VWF. What was it?
I have that right.
UWF,
I believe it was like UHF. Yeah.
UHF.
My story. I'm going to have the same type of story. Yeah. UHF, that you had to switch it to the UHF and like channel 22 or 7 or whatever it was and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you were watching it through static half the time. And I remember seeing that and I was like, holy cow, this is crazy. And then I was glued to it ever since. And then obviously, as you know, around that time, your Hulk Hogan's were coming up, and then WrestleMania started popping off. And I was more of I watched WWF because obviously it came on Saturday mornings. And, when you're a little kid, you watch cartoons and then wrestling comes on. But my main wrestling watching was the NWA, Ric Flair, the Four Horsemen, Barry Windham, Magnum TA, Ronnie Garvin, the Freebirds, Dusty Rhodes. Yeah, that was my Nikita Koloff. Oh my God, he scared me. The Road Warriors. That was my jam. I loved the NWA because I felt like it was more real, where WWF is more like cartoony type thing. But my main wrestling federation that I used to love was World Class Championship Wrestling. And I forget what channel it came on, but it was some weird time in the afternoon.
Yeah, it's like 5:00 on Saturdays or something. I was going to get into that too. My whole schedule of watching wrestling when I was a kid. I think it was like 5 or 6 o'clock on a Saturday. Remember? They were all.
I think mine, when I saw it, it was like in the middle of the week. It was like some weird channel. I don't even remember what channel it was, but bro, the Von Erichs, Iceman King Parsons, Bruiser Brody, Abdullah the Butcher, Kamala, Devastation Incorporated. Jesus,
Chris
I could
Adams,
go
Gino
Chris
Hernandez.
Adams. I could go. Gino Hernandez was my dude. I could go on. And then I would find, oh shit, there's other ones. There's AWA too. And you
ESPN,
got Nick Bockwinkel and
Zabisco was
Zabisco, Greg Gagne, Vern Gagne, the Killer Bees, I think, were there before they went to
Rick
WWF.
Martel was big there. Shawn Michaels started there. Scott Hall started there.
Midnight Rockers. Yeah.
Diamond Dallas Page started there.
He was like a manager.
Paul E. Dangerously was a manager there.
Yeah, it was good. It was good stuff. And again, WWF, yes, I did watch it, but I was more into the territories back then. And then slowly but surely, as Vince McMahon was taking over, your Rick Rudes would come over to the WWF. And before that, you know, your Hulk Hogan's and your Iron Sheiks ended up in the WWF. And before you know it, all your favorites from the territories ended up in WWF somehow. So then there was really only two federations left, and it was WWF and NWA, or I guess it was still NWA, then turned into WCW. So I go way back that far. Let me go over my Mount Rushmore of wrestling, just so you guys get an idea of who I like and what I'm about in wrestling, and then we'll go over Zach's history with the pro wrestling. My Mount Rushmore of wrestling is pretty simple: Macho Man Randy Savage, Bruiser Brody, and I'll get to Bruiser Brody in a minute. So Randy Savage, Bruiser Brody, Hayabusa / Sabu. Anytime I list my Mount Rushmore, I always put them as equal. Hayabusa, Sabu, and Kenny Omega. As much as I hate to admit it, Kenny Omega got me back into wrestling when I was out of it for about 6 or 7 years. It must have been 2017 when one of his matches with Okada popped up on my YouTube feed, and I was like, "Oh my God, like what is happening?"
They tore the house down.
It was like the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. So that is my Mount Rushmore. And getting back to Bruiser Brody, when I call it the Bruiser Brody test. Anytime that I see a wrestler in the ring, AEW, WWE, I always visualize that wrestler being in the ring with Bruiser Brody and seeing if they stand the test of time against, against Brody.
Oh, don't get me going, man.
And, I mean, AEW specifically, I know Orange Cassidy is like a fan favorite.
You think Orange Cassidy could knock Bruiser Brody out with a flying punch?
Yeah. Bruiser Brody standing across the ring with Orange Cassidy, standing across the ring with Darby Allin, standing across the ring with Ray Phoenix,
you could be here all day.
Jack Perry. Yeah, we could be here all day. And it's just like, bro, what are these guys like? This is crazy.
How about Christian's adopted son? What's that kid's name?
Oh, Nick Wayne. Yeah,
you can see him across the ring from Bruiser Brody.
No, you can't. It's like a joke. They would remember how back in the day they would have the bigger guys. Andre the Giant would fight 3 guys at a time.
Yeah.
It would literally be Bruiser Brody versus Darby Allin, Orange Cassidy, and Jack Perry, like in wrestling. And he would just be throwing them around. But again, I know wrestling has changed, but that is my Mount Rushmore. Obviously, Randy Savage is the total package: wrestling, physique, promo, intensity. Brody just looked like a scary monster when you were a little kid. Well, when I was a little kid. The athleticism and bringing a new style of wrestling that I've never seen before was the Hayabusa and Sabu combination, just using the ropes and doing flips and 450 splashes and all the different stuff that both of them used to do, and then incorporating the weapons that Sabu with the chairs and this and that and the tables. It was crazy. And Kenny Omega, obviously, seeing somebody who's got size. He's not really a good promo, but he's got size.
He looks the part.
He looks the part, and the talent that he has, the move set that he has, the shit that he's able to do in the ring I was like, wow, like this dude might be the best wrestler in the world. So that's what kind of brought me back to wrestling. And I'm sure as we start doing these shows and the reviews, more of my history and the reasons why like certain people will come out more, but I don't want this to be a 90-minute pilot / introduction. So Zach, who is your Mount Rushmore of wrestling? Well, first, who is how did you get started?
I believe I was watching it, I think in 1982. We didn't have cable, so we had the UHF, where the hell it was, and it was I believe it was WWF Wrestling Superstars. And I was watching it before this memory I have, but the first memory I can recall is when Ray Stevens pile drive Jimmy Snuka twice on the concrete.
Oh yeah.
And they had a big X that said censored on the screen, so you could kind of see behind, but you couldn't see because he was all busted up.
Yep.
I'm like, oh, this is good stuff. So, you know, I started watching that, and then we finally got cable, and then the Saturday TBS, you know, I think they had one show in the morning, one in the afternoon, and they'd be in studio interviewing everyone, and I was hooked. And then after that, a
This
couple
is
years,
was NWA, right?
it was NWA, yeah,
Yeah.
you know, the interviews and all that good stuff, and
Tony
they were,
Schiavone and David Crockett sitting there
yeah,
interviewing the guys
and
at
they
the
were in,
podium.
yeah, and Ric Flair was awesome,
Oh yeah.
um, entertaining. My dad hated Dusty Rhodes, um, because he was like, because his physique.
Yeah.
Um, and one time he made me turn it off because he didn't like the way he looked.
Oh jeez.
Yeah, but so I had that, and then I had World Class Championship Wrestling, where I, you know, we're only about 300 miles apart from each other where we grew up.
Uh-huh.
That would come on in the evening on Tuesday or on Saturdays for me, from what I remember. I'm old, and I would watch that also, with the Von Erichs. I mean, you already said everyone who was on it.
Yep.
So that's how I got started, and I was hooked probably all the way up till my senior year in high school. Then I was gone for, you know, the military and all that stuff. So, and then I started getting back to it later.
Mm-hmm.
My Mount Rushmore is going to show my age.
Okay.
I'm more of a traditional guy than you are.
Mm-hmm.
And this is no particular order. I'll tell you my favorite wrestler is, he's on here. In no particular order, Bruno Sammartino.
Okay.
He was, because I have some bias because he's from Pittsburgh, where I'm from. He was the first major draw, I think, like real attraction, right? In the 70s and in Madison Square Garden. He was huge.
Oh yeah.
Like, he was big.
Him
Bruno
and
Sammartino.
Superstar Billy Graham used to have like some battles, right?
Yes.
If
And
I
then
remember correctly. It's a little bit before my time.
yeah, a little and well, people may already, Larry Zabisco, who went to my high school. Yes, he graduated before me, got started in the business. He found out where Bruno lived
Mm-hmm.
and asked him how he got into business. Bruno told him to go to college and start wrestling in high school and come back and see him after he graduates, which he did. And then they ended up becoming buddies, and they ended up feuding, but that's neither here nor there. Zabisco's not on my list. Ric Flair,
Okay.
I think it's self-explanatory if you're old school.
Yep.
Roddy Piper, who was my favorite wrestler of all time. When everyone hated him, I loved him. I think he was great, way ahead of his time. His promos,
Oh
the
yeah.
intensity, he was nuts. You know, and I've gone back and watched his was it Oregon he was in, some California stuff he was in.
Yeah.
We didn't get to see that back in the day because it was,
Right.
local television. So he's even better in some of that stuff.
Oh yeah.
Just so good. He's my favorite. And then more modern, my last one would be Steve Austin.
Okay. Did Steve
Stone Cold.
Austin, did the reign of or the rise of Stone Cold Steve Austin kind of get you back into wrestling, or?
That started what kind of got me back in. I started watching it bits and pieces. So I was in the Marine Corps for 4 years. I got out in late '94. Then I was in college for a couple of years, so I wasn't watching it a lot. What got me back in was being from Pittsburgh. I'm a big Pittsburgh Steelers fan. Kevin Green started getting involved in some wrestling, and I believe this is pre NWO. You'd have to check me on that.
Mm-hmm.
But so I started watching because of him.
Yep.
The WCW, and I was also watching the WWF because I watched both. I flipped back and forth. That's what kind of got me into it.
Okay.
And then I watched religiously once the NWO was formed for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and by the way, very underrated as far as the moves they did in some of the high flying were the Steiner brothers. For how big they were.
Oh yeah.
They did some, and Scott Steiner's probably my second favorite wrestler of all time.
Yeah. But he's not on your Mount Rushmore.
No, he's on my Mount Rushmore, but I loved him. He was great. And
yeah, Steiner was the man.
He just unbelievable. All natural physique. I loved it.
Oh, of course. Yeah. All natty chicken patty, baby.
And his promos got better and better as he became Big Papa Pump. They were great.
Yeah. You never knew what he was going to say. He would come, they would give him direction. Like, all right, you got a feud coming up with DDP. You got 2 minutes, go, sell the match. And he would go out there and he'd just cut a promo on Ric Flair for no reason. it was great.
Dude, that was he was out of his mind.
For those of you who've been following me for a long time and remember, I used to backyard wrestle.
Mm-hmm.
I was Vinny Venata with BGCW, Barrett Gardens Championship Wrestling. We built a wrestling ring in the backyard. Ray Vegas, who's a co-host on our podcast, he was Ghetto Fabulous. And there were probably somewhere between 15 and 20 of us sometimes for the shows we would put on different costumes and we would wrestle under a mask. So I was the Skeleton Ninja and Vinny Venata, but Vinny Venata, you would see my face. Skeleton Ninja, I had a skull mask on, and I would change my outfit and just wear all black and with a mask, and I was like a jobber. But yeah, Vinny Bonata was a main character. We would do all the things. This was from 2000, I think 1998 through 2002 is when we did it. We built a wrestling ring with mattresses. We laid down a layer of 2 layers of cinder blocks. I think it was like 20 by 20. We went to Home Depot. We bought posts. We bought ropes. We bought the little the eye hooks that we made turnbuckles. The ropes were so fugazi that we couldn't actually bounce into them, but they were there. We just we had to pretend that we were like bouncing into the ropes, but we would do all the things. We would tape our fingers up and put razor blades in our fingers.
Did you blade yourself?
Yeah, I used to blade right on the top of my forehead because I had a lot of hair. And bro, you make the littlest slice in your forehead, it'll bleed like a mofo. But the problem is we were always outside and it was 90 degrees outside. Mm-hmm. And when you're bleeding profusely, you're like, you're passing out, dude.
Yeah, I know.
There was a time I was wrestling this dude called the Drifter. His name was Randy Harder, but his character name was the Drifter way before Elias was the Drifter or whatever.
Yeah.
I think on the indie scene, his name was the guy with the guitar and the long hair that looks like Randy Savage.
Yeah, he's from my area. I like him, actually.
Okay. Yeah, his name I think on the indies was called the Drifter, but this was back in the late 90s. I was wrestling the Drifter and I was bleeding profusely out of my forehead. And I remember I like basically passed out. I was supposed to kick out. He gave me like a stupid move, like a suplex or something, and I was supposed to kick out. And I lay there, and the referee was just like, I don't know what to do. 1, 2, 3. So I got beat with a suplex by the Drifter. It was like a mid-carder, and I was like a main eventer in our backyard wrestling federation.
I have a bone to pick with you real quick. This is 1998.
Yeah.
You know how old I feel? That's the year I started the company I work for.
Oh, jeez. Well, listen, this has been the pilot of the show. I really want to take this seriously. Zach and I had the conversation about it. I said it earlier. We're going to take this seriously. We're going to do this. It's not going to be a one and done. I don't care if one person listens or 100 people listen or 10,000 people listen. We're going to do this because we do it anyway.
Yeah.
And
so basically we're texting instead of texting, we're on a live stream or a podcast talking to each other anyways.
Exactly.
About the wrestling. So yeah.
And we are not we disagree on a lot of things. So
you can tell by our Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, we disagree on a lot of things, and it should be entertaining. And I appreciate if you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel. I think it's at Bearded Bastards Podcast, and our Instagram is Bearded Bastards Podcast. We have a Facebook page, Bearded Bastards Podcast, and again, podcast is a loose term. We don't have an audio version of a podcast. It's just going to be live streams and recaps, reviews, interviews, and roundtables. So thank you guys very much for listening. Zach, is there anything I left out before I close this up?
No, I think we got it right. It is at Bearded Bastards Podcast on YouTube. You're correct. So we're good.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much. Zach, I said before we went live, like, this is going to be 10 minutes tops. We're at 33 minutes.
Well,
so
me and you won't shut up. That's why
that is
like
true.
To talk. So
that is true. All right, guys. At Bearded Bastards on YouTube, which is probably where you're watching this right now. But give us a follow on Instagram and Facebook, Bearded Bastards Podcast. You'll see me and Zach's face pop up with that old school blue WWF backdrop. Take care. Brush your hair. Here comes a Zach, and here comes a Franker. The Bearded Bastards, walking disaster. All right, guys. See you later.